All right, I think we should be live now. Let me just jump on Discord and let folks know that we are starting, and then we can begin. Oh, I just noticed my camera is super duper out of focus. Let me fix that also. Much better. I'm not sure why that happens, but it does. Okay, and one other thing, I'm gonna give them a link to the live stream here. And YouTube. There we go. Sweet. Should be ready to rock and roll. Okay, very good. Hi, everyone. Anybody have questions for me already, or should I just jump straight into some AMA stuff?
I have some questions, Kent.
Great.
Okay, give me a second. I'll share my screen so that I can show you. 1 second. So, sharing screen. So one question is, so this is from our club meeting from Sunday, and we went through the first 15 videos of the testing React components. And this is around those like 15, 16, 17 video where we are testing React error boundary. And we were confused with this particular test uh, where we render a bomb within an error boundary. Then we say, okay, should throw an error. We make some assertions. And then we re-render it without a should throw. And then we are getting this we are getting this try again button. Shouldn't this statement fail because now you're not saying should throw error true, but somehow when we put debuggers in there, the state of this bomb component was not resetting. It was still maintaining that state of should throw true, and it renders with showing the error and try again button, and then we go ahead and click that button and make further assertions. So this line confuses me specifically.
Yeah,
Why?
sure. Do you mind if I share so I can point
Yeah.
around and show some stuff? So let's see, this is the React testing library course repo, and that, oh, where'd this thing go? Oh, there it is. Wait a second. I lost my Zoom window.
Yeah, that is hard sometimes.
What the weird? There it is. Okay, cool. So sharing desktop 2, here we are. Okay, so which file was that? Can you remind me?
Yeah, it is error boundary 3.js.
Okay, cool. And then this is pulling the error boundary from this file. Error boundaries have to be class components, and so that's what we've got here. And let me bump up this as well. So just so everybody's on the same page here, we have an error boundary that has some state for has error. This is a very simple error boundary. To be clear, in your applications, you should be using React error boundary. This is a great package that I maintain and strongly advise just use this thing. So yeah, but for the purpose of the exercise, I wanted you to see an implementation of this. And so we're maintaining the state has error, component did catch is catching that and setting that error. And then we have this report error, but that'll, report errors to our service, our backend or something. And then we have this try again. So when you click on the button, it resets has error to false. So we'll talk about the bomb component here in just a second, but let's assume that you're wrapping this inside of a component tree, and one of those components underneath it throws an error. So that's going to bubble up to this error boundary, and the error boundary is going to set its state to has error true. So when it does that, then instead of rendering all the children, which is where the error happened, it's going to render this little UI that says, hey, there was a problem. Would you like to try again? So when you click on that try again, all that's happening is it resets this state. We trigger a re-render and we'll render those children again. Now, if those children are throwing the error when they're rendering, then this will actually trigger another error and we'll just get this UI again. And it'll happen so fast that you won't even notice. So the only real benefit to this try again button is that if the error was thrown not during render, but during some sort of user interaction that was like a fluke or something, then try again will work out okay because we'll just re-render all the children and everything will be fine. But if the process of rendering the children is what caused the error, then simply re-rendering the children without changing any other state or anything else, any props or anything else at all, that's not going to do any good. So that's something to keep in mind as we look at this example. And this is actually why React Error Boundary goes a step further and allows you to, let's find it, to have reset keys, an on reset handler, and there's a, let's see, just several different ways to reset the state of your component. So the combination of reset error boundary, which is effectively what's happening with this try again, where it just resets the state of the error boundary. The combination of that reset error boundary and this on reset handler, which will allow you to update some state in your application so that this error won't happen again. That's what makes React Error Boundary special. Okay, so with that in mind, if we look at our BOM component, it's pretty simple, just contrived for the purpose of this exercise. We accept a should throw prop, and if that's true, then we're going to throw this error. Otherwise, we'll just return null. And so for the BOM component to actually throw an error for us to test this error boundary, and by the way, this is actually a pretty reasonable way to test an error boundary. So the purpose of the exercises in testing JavaScript is to show you how to test your own custom error boundary. I'm kind of thinking that in the update of testingjavascript.com, I might just exclude this entirely because I think everybody should just be using React Error Boundary. I see no reason to write your own, period. But that will be replaced with probably is showing how to use React Error Boundary and then how to make sure that you're using it properly so you can recover from errors. So that's probably what I'll replace it with. But anyway, this is a perfectly great way to test an error boundary if you're writing your own, is to make a function component that that throws given a certain scenario. So with that, when we render this, the error boundary and the BOM, nothing's going to happen. It's just going to return null. So there won't be any UI at all. And the reason that we do this is just to make sure that you can render everything and everything is fine. And then we're going to re-render it with the should throw value here so that we can make sure that when this is rendered, it throws an error. Okay, so that's going to throw an error that will be caught by the error boundary. And so this is the UI that we're going to see at that point in time. So once we've re-rendered, it's going to throw that error component to catch is going to run. That's going to trigger a re-render of the error boundary, and it's going to render this. Okay, so we're going to see there is a problem and try again. And that's where we come in here and just make sure that, oh, and it also is going to report the error. So we verify that that function is going to be called as well. And then we'll make sure that the alert shows up, that div with the role of alert. And then we'll clear out the console because even though you have an error boundary, the React is still going to log to the console, log an error. So we'll clear that out. We'll clear out the mock report error function. And then this is the big question right here, is this code. So why do we need to re-render it with should error or with no should throw prop like we did before? And then if like that button shouldn't even exist, right? Let me make sure I'm understanding this right. So your question is, because we're re-rendering this without should throw, then how does this button try again even exist at that point? Is that right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So just because we're re-rendering something doesn't mean the state of that thing changes. The only time that re-rendering something would cause the state of that thing to update is if one, you're rendering a different component entirely, which we're not. We're rendering the same component type. Or two, if the key for that component that you're rendering is different, which is not the case because we don't have a different key. And so therefore, because we're not actually resetting that component, we're not unmounting it and then mounting a new version of that same component, the state of the error boundary is going to remain consistent, okay? And so for that reason, has error is still true because we made it true by rendering a bomb that exploded. And so because that state is true, then we're still rendering this. It doesn't matter what the children props are. Those props can change forever. Like, it doesn't matter. All that matters is the fact that the state has error is still true. And so that's why the button still exists, is because even though inside we actually have a bomb that's not throwing, that doesn't matter because the state of the error boundary hasn't been reset. And so we're clicking on this button to, or the button exists because the state is still there. We're clicking on it to reset that state. And one other thing is the reason that we have to do this re-render is because this button exists like before this re-render. Like, we don't need the re-render for the button to exist. The reason we need the re-render so that we have a bomb that will not explode is because if we try to click on try again, then all of this stuff will just happen over again. So it'll try to re-render the children, but the children that it has is a bomb that throws. And so that's just going to throw again and run all of this stuff over again. So this is a great question. I can see, like, it's very understandable that there would be confusion around this. And so there will be an update to testing JavaScript that simplifies a lot of this. But does my answer kind of help make sense?
Yeah, it does. Also, it invoked another question, like, do we have something in React testing library that unmounts a component? Like, if on line 55 I unmount it and then again re-render it, then I should see the try again button is no longer there, right?
Yep, correct. Yeah. So there are a couple ways that you could approach this if you wanted to kind of unmount and remount this component. Probably the easiest is just to specify a key prop right here. So that will unmount the old one, mount a new one in its place. But if you wanted to completely unmount, then there's a unmount function that you get from render. And so then you can simply call unmount, excuse me, right here. Or you could also import cleanup from React Testing Library. You could call cleanup right here and then call render again. You wouldn't re-render in that case because the DOM node would be gone when you call cleanup. But yeah, so you could just do a regular render right here. But at that point, I think that's sort of two different tests because, like, you're not testing the life cycle of this component. I'm not talking about component lifecycle, but like what things happen over time for this component. And so I would see that to be less valuable. But if that was something that you needed to do for some reason, maybe you've got some context that behaves differently or something like that. Or especially if you want to test unmounting, which I think I've got an exercise about that. But yeah, so if you wanted to test, like, to make sure that things are cleaned up properly when you unmount, then that would be another situation where you can use unmount to make sure it's cleaned up properly.
Sure. That was helpful. Thank you, Ken.
Great.
We had one more question though. This last one. So it's with the wait keyword. In, I think, video 12 or something, we had a scenario where we click a button, make an API call, we mock it, and eventually we set a state to show some message. So we'd had to introduce the wait keyword for React testing library to just tick until that assertion is passed. But what confused us is, like, we just did some exercises on a counter app, and it's doing the same thing, like it's incrementing and decrementing using set state. But there we don't have to use a wait keyword. We were just able to do next line assertions. Why is that? Is it because those updates are quick and we don't have to, like, why wouldn't that state update being asynchronous won't need wait keyword?
Yeah, if you can tell me which file that we're talking about, then I'll be able to answer that a lot better. It's hard
Sure.
to see.
Just give me a second. I'll also have to look.
Yeah, no problem. You said it was video 12. I'll see if I can find it too.
Sure.
And this is on the testing React components. Okay,
Yeah.
mock HTTP requests.
Yep, that should be the one.
Okay, yeah. So here I have async, and I put await right here. Is this the code that you're talking about?
Yep.
Very good. Yeah, so let's just review this really quick. Here's our greeting loader. And what this does is we have some state managed here. We have a form. When this form is submitted, we say load greeting for input. And then we call this load greeting from our API. That gives us back some data, which we then set state. So the question is, right here, you're saying that you didn't actually have to put await right here. You can just
So
remove that.
not in this case, but there are cases where I'm just testing a counter application which has increment button, and when I'm clicking that, I'm just doing fire event dot click increment, and then on next line I could just query and say the text is there or incremented text is there. So
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So actually, let me see. I've got an example of the type of test that you're talking about. Oh yeah, here we go. So yeah, we've got let me bump this up. We've got a counter that increments every time you click on this. And here I'm using user event, but fire event would work here as well, either way. But you'll notice that I'm able to assert that the count has been updated immediately after this with no await needed.
yeah.
So the reason that this works is because there's nothing asynchronous going on in this component. React updates things synchronously. There is a slight caveat to all of this, which I can talk about batching here in a second. But for all intents and purposes, and when you're using React Testing Library utilities, you can assume that everything happens synchronously if there's nothing specifically asynchronous going on. So the reason that this one requires a wait is because we're doing some async stuff here. So we have to wait for this load greeting function to actually run to completion before the state update happens. And so that's why this wait for is, or this wait is required. In the latest version of React Testing Library, wait has been deprecated in favor of wait for. So keep that in mind. But in any case, this waiting for this thing to happen is required because the interaction that we're doing requires or does something asynchronous. So we need to wait for that asynchrony to finish. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
So it's for the promise that's above the set state, right?
Yep. It's just
Okay.
waiting for this thing to happen.
Okay.
So regarding some of the like subtleties around React state batching, this is where ACT comes into play. So it's kind of trying to think how far down this rabbit hole I want to go. So for performance reasons, if you have multiple set state calls, whether that be in the same component or in various components that react to state changes based on other components, like its parent component re-renders it, and so then it's going to update its own state or whatever. So if you have various set state calls happening, React will actually not run the re-render when you call this set state. Like right here, it's not going to actually trigger a re-render when you call set count. It's actually going to wait until it's called all the event handlers and everything, and it's going to batch up all of those set state calls. And then when like the last thing that React does before it hands things back over to the browser, it says, okay, great. So now I've called all the event handlers and everything. I know what set states need to happen. So now I'm going to execute all of those in the proper order, in the sequence in which they were called. And so then once all of those set states have been done, then it says, okay, now I know what the states are for all of these components, and now I'm going to render all of those things, all the affected components. And so because of this behavior, sometimes you can you'll call, well, actually all the time you'll call set state, and then the line immediately after it will not have the updated state, and there's actually nuanced reasons for that as well. But just like keep in mind that immediately after you call set state does not mean that the component has re-rendered. So that might lead you to believe that, like, hey, hold on a second, that means that the DOM shouldn't have re-rendered by this time because I clicked on this and that just called this, so I should have to like wait for React to call set state. But keep in mind that when we fire some sort of event, we're not calling into React directly. We're just calling into the DOM APIs and saying, hey, dispatch this event. And then React has an event handler, and it runs all of the different things that need to be run based on that event that happened. And then after that, then it's going to trigger all of the re-renders. And so by the time that this all of this code is executed, React has actually triggered all of the re-renders. So we can expect this, the DOM to be updated by then. So that all happens synchronously. Things get a little bit different when we're talking about concurrent mode and stuff, which is one of the reasons why the act utility was introduced a few versions ago, so that we can deal with some of those nuances. And then on top of that, we also have side effects that run after our render happens, and that does happen after the browser or React says, okay, here's the new DOM browser, and the browser's like, cool, let me paint so that I can show the user what this new DOM looks like. And then after that, React will run its side effects. But normally in your tests, you don't really care about that time between when React updates the DOM and React runs your side effects. You don't care. You just say, hey, I want to do this interaction, and I want React to do all of its magical stuff, including running my side effects, and then I want to make some assertions based on those side effects. And so this is another thing that, in addition to the fact that React is going to run everything synchronously, except with concurrent mode, things get kind of funny. So that's one of the reasons Act was created, so that you can say, hey, no, I don't want concurrent mode. I just want it to like run everything right now. But in addition to ensuring that everything's running synchronously, we also have Act to ensure that our side effects are also run synchronously as well, so that it actually flushes all of the side effects, all those side effect callbacks, those use effect callbacks. And so that is why Act was created, is for those two reasons: for concurrent mode to just make sure everything runs synchronously, and then for all of our use effect callbacks to make sure that those are also flushed synchronously as well, so that we can continue with our tests without having to worry about like waiting for things to happen. And so all of that said, because React Testing Library is wrapping the Act or wrapping all of these function calls inside of React's Act utility, we can ensure that anytime you use a user event or even any of the asynchronous utilities, that all of your side effects have been run, and like all of the re-renders have been updated, everything's happened on React side by the time that this function call is done. So then from there, you can continue on. So then the only time you need to worry about asynchronous things is when your code is doing asynchronous things. So right here, for example, our code is doing asynchronous things, and so therefore we must also do asynchronous things in our tests. And that like drastically simplifies so much of the test writing, is that like you can just make everything synchronous unless your code is doing something asynchronous. Like making an API call or something. Yeah, just makes writing tests a lot simpler. Now, all of that said, you could actually just change everything to be asynchronous and it would still work fine. So if you wanted to find this asynchronously, you could replace this with a find by label text. You'd add an await right there. You could say find by text, add an await right there. And you could asynchronously interact with these things, and then asynchronously, like you could just add waits all over the place. You might run into some situations where things change between the time that you your code says, okay, wait for this thing, and by the time it like actually checks for that thing to be there. But those would be pretty edge cases, so I probably shouldn't even brought it up. But in any case, most of the time I write my tests synchronously unless my code is doing something asynchronous, and that keeps like my tests easier to follow, and it doesn't typically have like a big negative impact on my test writing. So hopefully that like sort of helped answer your question.
Yeah, it did. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Yeah, sure. I can be a little long-winded, so I should probably stop talking more frequently. Cool. Anybody else have questions? As is customary, when nobody has questions, I'm just gonna like observe this. Hey, actually, for funsies, I have taken a while to send this out, and I haven't actually sent this out. So y'all who are watching live are the first ones who are gonna see this. But we've got soul crushing. Oh, what did I call it? I should have called it soul crushing components. Maybe that's what I'm gonna change it to. What did I call it? I can't remember now. I have a blog post that I just wrote, and now I can't remember what I called it. I wrote it last night. Dang it. Yeah, I guess it was a bad name if I can't even remember what it was called. I'm gonna have to look up the pull request where I put this. Nightmares, that's what it was. Soul crushing nightmares. But I think I'm gonna call it this soul crushing components because I like that better. This should absolutely, maybe I'm spelling it funny. Oh, yeah, I actually spelt it wrong here. Nightmares. So yeah, this won't be here for very long. Nightmares. Anyway, yeah, so this is my blog post for today. So if you want to go look that up, that'll be kind of fun. Fun to read, but I'm going to change that. Anyway, unless anybody has questions, feel free to interrupt me at any time if you have a question. I'm going to just go to my AMA and explore all these questions that I haven't answered in a very long time. Thought that I answered this. Yeah.
Again?
Yeah.
Pushpendra here, man. So it's actually, so I'm stuck and I'm not able to get expected result while implementing the router testing.
Yeah, I
So
feel like I
can
remember seeing a question somewhere. What channel was that in?
that was in testing JavaScript.
Okay. Let's see here.
But I got around that.
Okay, sorry. So did you have a specific question you wanted to ask then?
Yeah. So in chat, I have pinged the repo in which I'm working on.
I'll put that in
So
the
the
office hours
thing
so folks can see that.
after, sure. So I can share my screen if you like.
Oh, sure. That makes things easy.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So in this implementation, what I will just go through what my objective is here. So I have a React router. So I'm using version 6 here, and these are my initial components that I'm rendering. So the app here is a protected component. So in app, I'm looking for whether the user has signed in or not. So for now, I'm just getting a local state for if the issue or unexpected behavior is once I know that user has signed in, so the app will render the home component. Now, once the home component is rendered, which is in UI, you can see this is my home component. So when I click on profile, so I should navigate to profile, or when I click on about, I should be able to navigate to about. But that is
Sorry,
not
I
happening in
can't
case
see
of my test cases.
I can't see the app because I think you're only sharing VS Code. I can't see anything else.
Oh, really sorry for that. Okay, okay. Desktop. Now,
Yep.
Now, okay, wait a second. What happened?
It looks kind of blue.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So that was haze over.
There we go.
So now the app is coming, localhost.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So this is my home page. So if
Okay.
user is logged in, so my app will direct to home page. Now from home page, I have these three navigation options. One is about, one is profile, and one is logout. So when I clicks on about, I goes to the about page and I can navigate back to home page. Now this is not happening when I am testing it. Like when I'm testing and when I'm clicking on my navigation, but links, I am still on the same page. I am not navigating to the another page. In test. So I will run my test here. Yarn test. I will close this. Yeah. So let me just for now clear everything and run only app. So yeah, this is what actually happening. So see, I added to my local storage authentication details, so that when I renders my app, I goes to my home page, and that is happening. So this is my home page. So and this is how I am checking that I am my own home page. So I am looking for testing this role.
Perfect.
Now I'm using an user click option to navigate to profile. So I'm trying to click on this profile icon. And when I click on this profile icon and then I do a debug, so in debug, I am seeing my home page only. So the navigation is actually not happening.
Yeah, I would expect that to show the navigation page as well. Can you go back to the app and click on that?
Sure.
I just want to see what that's supposed to look like.
Code base, right?
Sorry,
or
no,
the UI?
in Chrome. I just want to see what that looks like.
Okay. Sure. Here.
So sorry, if you click on profile.
And this is profile.
Okay.
So profile makes an asynchronous request actually. So I'm getting this from typecode API.
Gotcha. Okay, so now go back to the code, and I'm gonna so you're making a network request when you navigate there.
But in case of about, just to stop you there, in case of about, I am not doing the same. So about is a static page.
Okay. Yeah, let's take a look at that.
But it is not happening for about also. So in case if I do an about. So why it's taking time? Okay. So in case of about also, the navigation is not working.
Yeah. Okay. So let's take a look at Chrome again, and I want to see what the about page says.
Okay, sure. About is kind of
remember.
simple.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Sorry.
So now go back to your test. Test, yeah. And here I want to wait for a heading that has the text content of about. So do you mind if I take control of your screen here?
Sure.
Request remote control.
Yeah.
Oh, you might have to close Zoom to do this. So don't bother. It's all right.
So what you are saying, like I looked, I also expected the same thing. So I tried that in home. So what I did was I waited for, okay, let me do commands there.
Well, here you're just rendering the home page, not the full app. So this one you won't be able to navigate around because you're not rendering your full router. Is that right?
No, but so the render is coming from my utility actually. So
Oh,
this is my
okay.
utility render.
And okay.
And the same render I'm using in app also. Actually, app also uses my utility render only because app doesn't have the router context. See, app is not having the router with it. Router is in index.js.
I see. Okay, that actually might have something to do with it. Maybe. Yeah, I don't think it would, but it could. So let's just keep going with this line of thought. What I was thinking. On line 14, go ahead and grab or pull out or destructure find by test ID in addition to what you have, or find by role actually. And then you'll want to make your test async on line 12. And then right above debug, yeah, do await find by role heading. And then as a second argument for this, for find by role, so yeah, we're not going to call to have text content here actually.
Okay.
So as a second argument to find by role.
Yeah. Okay, second argument. Yeah.
Yeah. It will be an object, and you'll pass a property called name. And then the name will be about. And I would do a case insensitive regex.
Okay. Okay.
So let's see this. I have a feeling that this will fail. And if it does, then I'm not sure. Without being able to dive a little bit deeper, I'm not sure what more we can do here.
So it was failing when I tried.
Yeah, so this should time out after a little bit. Yeah, I don't think this is going to work. So my next thought is that there's something weird going on with the memory router where it's not getting wired up properly with those routes that you're defining. Yeah, from there, like I don't have any more knowledge on the top of my head. So here's what I would recommend for further debugging of this. First of all, I actually am going to be updating testing JavaScript with this recommendation pretty soon. But I have, in the last few months, have moved away from using memory router in my tests. I no longer use memory router. And instead, I just use the regular router. And I can share with you, I'm going to stop the sharing here now. Oh, I thought I could do that, except it's not done that. Stop participant sharing. I've stopped, but I can still see, so that's weird. Because I want to share my screen. Okay. There we go. So I will show you what I'm doing now and what I'm going to recommend. So if we go to the Bookshelf app is like the container for all of my ideas, all of the latest and greatest ideas here. So, and honestly, there are only like 3 things about testing JavaScript that need to be fundamentally changed. And they're all like relatively simple to explain. So the first is some API changes. So I no longer destructure things from render. Most of the time I don't bother with the return value from render. Now I use the screen API. And I wrote a blog post about this, or that includes this. So I just pasted a link to that in the Office Hours Discord channel. So yeah, the render, I no longer bother with what comes back from that. And then the second is I don't mock fetch API anymore. I use MSW. So stop mocking fetch is another blog post that talks about that, and I'll be updating testing JavaScript for that. And the Bookshelf app it does this, like follows this approach. So you can use that as a reference implementation until I get things updated. And then the third one, which is relevant to what we're talking about, is the memory router. I no longer use a memory router. So with those three things, let's talk about the how I do testing with the router. So if we look in the source here and go to test, app test utils, then this is where my custom render is. I'll paste a link to that in the Discord as well. And here, this is going to take our UI, and it takes our render options, and then also additional options for the route and the user that's currently logged in. If it's undefined, then we're going to create and log in as a new user. Otherwise, we'll use the user, and that allows us to test the unauthenticated side of our app by passing null as the user. And then we do window history push state so that we can update the URL to have the route that has been provided. And then we render the app. And we're rendering with the app providers. Now, these aren't test providers. These are actually the legit app providers for our app. So if I go to source context index.js, so this is what we're rendering both in our app as well as in our tests. So we're rendering the real React Query Config provider, the real router, and the real auth provider all right here. And that makes our tests like give us plenty more confidence because we're rendering all of our components in the same providers, in the same global providers that everything else is going to be rendered in. Now, like there could be other context providers that aren't global that you'd want to wrap your components in additionally. And but yeah, in general, it's just we render with the real router. And so we start off that real router rendering the correct route by using window history push state. And then typically, like for our auth provider, we're going to wait to resolve that logged in user. So we just wait for the loading to finish, and then we can continue on our way. So a good test that leverages this utility is our screen test. So this is our integration test in here. And that runs through all of that stuff. This one test file, these like 225 tests, account for like more than half, I think. Yeah, I think more than half of the code coverage of the whole project. And when there are test failures, it's maybe not quite as obvious what's broken as a simple unit test, but the alternative is to write thousands of unit tests. So I'm pretty happy with these 225 lines. So anyway, this is, I'll give you or copy paste a link to that as well. All of this is going to be part of Epic React. I'll code all of this up for you in Epic React, and it's pretty cool. So yeah, like I said, I am going to be updating testing JavaScript to have all the latest ideas and things. And there aren't a whole lot of like fundamental shifts, but that's one thing to answer your question specifically. That's one thing that you might try is see if you can actually render the real router, like just instead of bringing in the home component and the app component, see if you can bring in like extract this part out into like a providers or something component, or yeah, something like along those lines, so that you can reuse the same thing in your tests, and maybe that will help with these problems. So
Sure, I will try that part.
yeah,
Also,
good luck.
just to add, this is version 6, so there were few changes I have to do around. Like it won't be expecting history now. So history has been divided into two props, location and navigator. So that was something that I have to do in addition to wrapper. So I'm not sure, maybe something from version 6 may be affecting the expected behavior.
Well, I've got good and bad news for you. The bad news is that your theory is probably wrong. The good news is that I'm using version 6 in the Bookshelf app too. So hopefully that can kind of help you see that a way to do it so that it does work even with version 6. So
Oh, great.
yeah.
Sure. Thanks.
Yep.
Hey,
Hi.
hey, this is Jarrell speaking. So I've noticed a lot of people starting to use SWR or React Query in their apps. I also noticed you were using a little bit in Bookshelf. Could you kind of like talk about that a little bit and just kind of explain why you use it? Why it's a good idea to use one of those libraries around your fetching tool, whether you're using Axios or Fetch. Um, just kind of go into some of that. Those details.
Sure. Yeah, sure. I love React Query. It is so awesome. So as far as like reasons why I think it's so great, actually there was a great blog post over the weekend that I will find right now. Shoot, what is his handle?
I think it's Tanner Stack or Tan Stack or something.
Yeah, and actually he retweeted it, so I'll be able to find it from his retweets.
Tanner Lindsay, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, right here. Swizek. I'm not sure how to say his name, but yeah. So he explains like why just using regular fetch isn't going to cut it for you. It can be wasteful. Like, what if you need to render two of these? I think he shows like, yeah, what if you wanted to render two of these components that are both making these requests? Then you're going to be making two requests for the same data, right? And so that means, okay, well, let's move this request up higher in the tree, but you want to co-locate your data. And actually he gives a link to why you should, yeah, like it should. So here, let me grab this link to that. And Akash, I saw your comment here in Discord. I won't lose it. I'll answer your question next. Yeah, so also another blog post to take a look at. But yeah, so like you want to co-locate your data requirements to the components that require the data. But if you do that and you need to render like two different or two instances of the same component that need that same data, then that means you need to lift that data requirement to that one place. And so then you're making multiple requests for the same data, probably not a good idea. And so then you need to add a caching layer in context. And eventually you're just going to build your own React query, basically, is what that amounts to. And you don't need to do that because React query is just awesome already. So there's no reason to build your own. So that I think that's probably the biggest reason, is because like you don't get very far along with React before you face this problem of like, oh no, like I don't want to make the same request multiple times for the same data. I want to have that in one place, but I want to co-locate my data requirements in the components that need them. And so React Query just allows you to do that in a really effective way, and giving you all of the right knobs you need to twist for how long should this cache be stale. The idea behind stale while revalidate is just brilliant, where you don't, like, you just show the data that you have in the cache and then go and make sure that the cache is up to date. So really cool stuff there. And that's the biggest thing, is it just makes managing that cache really great. And once the big realization for me is that once you separate your server cache state from your application UI state, like your the tweets versus the modal is open state. Once you separate those, then your state management in your app just becomes really simple. So anyway, hopefully that helps answer your question, Gerald. Do you have any other questions on top of that?
Oh no, that works perfectly well. I'm gonna play around with it a little bit and see what I come up with.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I'm a huge fan. And I've got a whole bunch of stuff in Epic React showing you, like helping you go through actual use cases for React Query. Tanner also has his own React Query Essentials course, which is very good. So if you wanted to dive in with a little hand holding, those are some good resources. And on top of that, if you wanted to get together a KCD club, learning club for that stuff, that would be a pretty effective way to learn this stuff too.
And you said you have this in Epic React. That's still not in access yet, correct? Or
yeah, that's right. So we've got countdown right here. So 20 days and 23 hours. I'm so excited.
cool, man, cool.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome. Like here, I'll show you just a little something here. If we go to the Epic React, here, let me find it. I think it is part. Where is it? React query. Here we go. Yeah, here we go. So we're right here, intro to React query, and we go all the way through. Yeah, all of that. That's all React query stuff. 24 videos, all about React query. It's
wow.
awesome. Oh my gosh, I can't wait for you all to see this. It's crazy. So good. Anyway. Oh my gosh, I can't wait. Cool. Okay, so let me answer the question that was here in the Discord from Akash or Akish. I'm not sure how to say your name. I'm sorry. If you can correct me, then that is welcome. Got a job assignment to create this without any UI library. Well, that's kind of neat. Fancy. And you can put your own logo on it and all that. Here, Mr. Rogers. I'm trying to rip Mr. Rogers DVDs right now, but yeah, it's not going so great. Okay, sweet. So let's put on Epic React. Whoa, nice. Okay, but this isn't what you want. You want to be able to build something like this, or to build this without any UI library. Oh, no, you're saying you got a job assignment to do this. So you did build this. Well, cool. Congratulations. It's great. Yeah, it doesn't look like that was actually a question. Well, good job. I put my Epic React logo on it. Oh, actually, was I sharing? Yeah, I was. Okay, cool. All right, on the same topic, what would you say are the advantages of using React Query over Redux? Oh man, whew, I could talk about this forever. Okay, the biggest advantages are around the lack of indirection. That's probably one of the biggest disadvantages of Redux. Well, okay, so let me back up. Biggest disadvantage of Redux is the natural inclination to stuff everything into Redux. That's the biggest problem. And the impact of that that problem is enormous, because it means that anytime you need to make any change to existing stuff that's in Redux, you have to fumble around through all of the other Redux stuff to make your change, which typically leads to you opening 30 files to follow the code path of what happens when you dispatch an action. And then as you're going through that, trying to make your change, it's super easy to break something else that somebody else wrote for like some completely different use case. So that's the biggest problem with Redux. React Query doesn't have this problem because you don't, the typical use case, and you'll see this in the Bookshelf app, is you make a query that has a key, and then you put that into a custom hook. And so you only have one place where you're dealing with this specific resource or this endpoint, and then you always just call that hook. And so it's a very direct from here to there. Boom, that's it. It's done. And then you can compose these hooks in really marvelous ways. So yeah, that's probably the biggest thing. So I would also suggest that they kind of solve different problems. React Query is 100% about the server cache, whereas Redux should just be about the UI state. So you should be able to use them effectively together. You just use React Query for all stuff that where the state is actually stored on the server. Use Redux for all state that is stored within your application. And once you have separated them properly, you'll look at Redux and be like, I don't know why I have Redux. I can do all of this with React state and context by itself. No big deal. There's not a whole lot left. So anyway, hopefully that answers that question. Another question, when is Epic React launched? I think I showed that after this question was answered. So 20 days and 23 hours. And what's the price? If it's not on there, then I'm not telling yet. So yeah, it will be on there, and there will be an early bird, and I will tell you when the early bird starts later this week, I think. So looking forward to that. Nobody's more excited about this than I am, as excited as people are. Okay, sweet. Maybe the problem with Redux could turn into a great blog post. Yeah, it probably could, except I try to avoid attacking other people's creations directly Yeah, like I'll do some things like stop mocking fetch, but I'm not really attacking anybody's. I've never written the blog post like why enzyme is the worst. I've written about why I don't like enzyme in other blog posts without that title, but anyway. Cool. So somebody asked a question here in chat privately in the Zoom chat. So typically I like those questions to go in Discord, but I'll answer this really quick. I have a question. When does it make sense to do visual regression testing, and should it be done on pages or components? And what are the tools you recommend for doing visual regression testing? Okay, so I'll be sharing my screen for this because I'm going to show you a couple of things. So the number one tool for visual regression testing is Applitools. So actually, before I say anything else, I have not done visual regression testing in production at scale at all. So everything that I say from here on out should be seen through that lens. I have seen demos and talked to very smart people about things enough for me to tell you what I'm about to tell you. So Applitools is awesome. Very impressed by the power of Applitools. It integrates with your existing tests. So that, typically, like let's say that you already have end-to-end tests or component tests and you want to add visual regression testing to those. With Applitools, it's as simple as install the thing and add an assertion. You're like, I want to take a snapshot of what things look like right here. So like they have integration with Cypress and other tools. And so, yeah, hey, look, there's a mention about Cypress right there. It's awesome. And so it'll take a snapshot, put it up in Applitools, and then you can integrate that with your CI to make sure that nothing actually breaks. So super awesome. This is one thing I recommend. Another thing that you can take a look at is Percy.io. And this has free for open source. So if you want to try it on your open source stuff, go for it. Percy.io, very similar type of thing. And that's all that I have to say about that. I haven't actually gotten a demo or worked with this, but it's another thing that you can look at. If you didn't want to spend any time looking at one or the other and you just wanted me to tell you, then I just tell you Applitools. And then there's one other thing. If you're making a UI library and you have like your deliverable isn't an app, but components, like was one of the last things that I was working on at PayPal, then Chromatic might be something to look at as well. React Storybook. These folks are actually the ones who are building Storybook now. Like they kind of own Storybook or something. There's something with that. They work on it a lot. Yeah, it's made by the Storybook maintainers. Set up in 2 minutes. Awesome stuff. So what I would suggest is create a Storybook for your stuff and then add Chromatic to it, and you'll be in a pretty sweet, solid place. There are things that visual regression testing can give you confidence in that literally nothing else that I know of can. And so if you really want some solid confidence on the way your UI looks, then using one of these visual regression testing tools is a good idea. So I'll paste all these in here, and feel free to look through those. Okay, great. Coming back up, unless somebody wants to interrupt me, I'm just going to look through Discord and see what's going on here. What will be a good idea to progressively start moving out of server data from Redux to React Query? So I've never done this. I've never migrated from Redux to React Query. I used Redux once in a production application, and I was really happy to not be working with it anymore when I was done. So I've never actually migrated away from Redux. What I would suggest, or my intuition tells me what I would try if I were in that situation, here, and I don't need to share anymore, is I would probably find the thing that is used the least, that has the least impact on my business. If it explodes or something goes wrong, then it's not a big deal. And I would, so I'd find that area and I would try to extract that out into a single hook, custom hook that uses useQuery. And then I would slowly expand how much I'm using React Query over time. So this would be like a migration over time. And it's totally a possible thing for you to migrate over time with this, especially since you can use query inside of components to get the data, and then you could feed that data back into Redux if it needs to be used for some reason in a dispatch call or something. Not during render or anything, just like when there's user interaction and it needs the data that used to be in Redux, but now it's actually in useQuery, you could just pass that along through the dispatch. So that, yeah, that would be my typical approach. But like I said, never actually done it. So good luck. A link to my office hours video. Yeah, so just go to YouTube, you'll find it. Yeah. Can we use React Query in a Create React app? Yes, absolutely. The Bookshelf app is a Create React app. So that is a yes. Oh, and never mind. Okay. Great. And just kind of going through some of the chat is kind of nice. You use less React. I think people who are using one of those should probably be encouraged to use it more. Blah 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 blah. Okay. So. It's hard sometimes to know whether these are comments or questions. Maybe I should have like a way. Maybe I'll make the bot, like you'll have a command that you execute with the bot, and the bot will like highlight the question or something. I don't know. Figure out something. Have I ever used Immer? Yeah, so I have not used Immer. No, not in. I think I did like a little play around with it once in a code sandbox, but no, I've never actually used Immer for realsies. But it like I look at it and I'm like, yeah, that's sure sounds a lot better than like spreading a bunch of objects, combining them together. You'll find that like the main situations where I needed to do that object combining, immutability, weirdness stuff, the only big place where I ever had to do that was in Redux. And so if I'm able to move everything over to React Query and then the rest can just be in a couple of different contexts or just in local state, then I don't really care about combining objects anymore. I don't do it a whole lot. So given that, I don't think that I'll really need to use Immer a lot. And then on top of this is an opportunity to share my screen again. So there is a new syntax coming to JavaScript, maybe, that I saw recently. Let me see if I can find it. It is in the TC39 proposals repo. Okay. And I think it's pretty new. No. Collection or what? No, I don't think so. This is really cool. So I want to find it. It might be stage 1, but let me just see. I would be really thrilled if it was stage 3 already. Yeah, I didn't think so. So let's look at, there's a stage 1 link somewhere, I thought. Stage 1. There we go. Partial application, maybe? I don't think so, but let's just see. Oh, right, no, not that. That's cool, of course, but proposal record tuple. This might be it. No, this is also cool, but no, this isn't it. Where is it? Pattern matching is cool, but not what I'm looking for. Man. Man, there are a lot of these. I saw a tweet about it a few months ago, and that's where. Here it is. I think this is it. Okay, yeah. So I think this is it right here. Boom. So so cool. I don't think that it should only be for records though. Yeah, so here they use Immer as an example of like this type of API, or like why the justification for having the API. Man, I didn't, maybe it only does make sense with tuples, or we'll just all be using tuples all the time. But look at this. So here you have this object, and then you say, hey, I want to set this property. I want to make a copy of this object, but I want the D property to be different. And so like to do that normally would be like a bunch of spreading and whatever, but with this new feature, then you can say, we're going to take, we're going to create a B object, and then there's a C object, and there's a D object, or a D property, and that's going to be a 4. We're going to combine that with whatever's coming from 1. And yeah, the effect is what you would expect it to be. So yeah, anyway, if we get that, then I don't need Immer at all. Like nobody needs Immer. We just get rid of Immer because like this, it's just mind blowing. That's awesome. So anyway, something really cool. I'll paste a link in the Discord. This is stage 1, so very, 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 very new.
Is that different than the normal spread? Why is
yeah. So first of all,
why is the spread under the override? Shouldn't it be on top?
Yeah. So the reason this is cool is because we can't do this right now. This is invalid syntax right here. And so like it's nothing like normal spread. If we wanted to do this ourselves, here, let's go to
I mean the order of the spread. They are spreading under the it should
so,
be the one, then the b.c.d before. Won't the b.c.d override the one from the?
No, that's what the syntax is all about. Is that it like allows you to say, hey, we're gonna take the properties of this thing and spread it into here, but we're gonna set this value. Now, like I think I now see what you're saying is like, shouldn't this be below the spread right here?
Yes, that's what I meant.
Yeah, and I agree with you. That seems odd. I feel like they should be switched. And if I were still on the TC39, then I would bring that up. I guess I can bring it up. In fact, you can bring it up. Just go to the issues, and maybe somebody's already brought this up. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. But yeah. Anyway, in any case, I'm excited about this, and I trust the TC39 to do right by us and make sure that it's actually legit. But I'm super, super stoked for that. Okay. Sweet. So we are over time, but I'll answer chat's question here really quick. The difference between using React queries and Axios, or React query and Axios. So you actually can use them together. So React query React query helps you manage asynchrony and caching. And that's all it does. It does those two things, asynchrony and caching. Axios allows you to asynchronously get data. And that's all that does. And so you can say, well, let's use React query to help us manage the asynchrony and caching of Axios. And that's what it does. That's what, yeah. So that's the answer to your question. I have nothing more to say. Okay, cool. Any last minute questions before I drop off? Okay, so let me just close out with a couple of things. So this has been Office Hours. It's a good time. We love it here. It's awesome. Today is actually Tuesday because yesterday was a holiday, so I moved it to today. But normally these are on Mondays at this time, and then on Thursdays at 4 my time. So whatever time that is for you. Yeah, and I am planning on doing that this Thursday. So look forward to that. You can add it to your calendar. I have that calendar event going through December, and yeah, the Zoom link is on the calendar there as well, or right here. And like I said, all of my questions and links and everything go into Discord so that you can look through the history. So please do join us on our Discord, because we're a good bunch and we do lots of cool things. Like I have my live streams that sometimes will be recorded, but sometimes they won't. So you want to be on the Discord to be notified about those. If anybody wants to fix this, this should have a hyphen in it, I think. Yep, it should. So there's that. And actually this video channel's gone now because I'm doing Zoom calls. So anyway, this part should all be updated. Another thing to look at is learning clubs. That's a cool thing. So don't miss that. It's a good time. And that's, yeah, I think that's all that I need to talk about. I'm going to be sending an email with a blog post for today to folks who are subscribed to Epic React. So subscribe there because it's awesome. And that's all. Thanks so much. We'll see y'all in the future. Goodbye.